Welcome to Judge Judy. Real cases, real people. Judge Judy Sheindlin presiding. This is the case of Johnson versus Smith.
All rise. This is the matter of Johnson versus Smith. Good morning. Mrs. Johnson, you are suing Mr. Smith for $5,000 for damages to your car. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Smith, you are countering that it wasn't you who caused the damage, but your friend, Mr. Peterson. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's get into the details. Mrs. Johnson, please tell me what happened on the night of June 5th.
Your Honor, on the night of June 5th, I parked my car in front of my house as usual. The next morning, when I went outside, I found the rear bumper and the side of my car smashed.
Did you see or hear anything that night?
No, I didn't. I was inside with my family, and we didn't hear a thing. But I do have a security camera that recorded the incident.
You mentioned that earlier. Let's take a look at this footage. Mr. Smith, do you recognize that car?
Yes, Your Honor. That's my car, but I wasn't the one driving it that
Who was driving your car, Mr. Smith?
night. My friend, Jake Peterson.
We'll hear from him shortly. Mrs. Johnson, please continue.
After discovering the damage, I checked the footage and saw the car hit mine. I then called the police and filed a report. Later, I was able to track down Mr. Smith because his car is quite distinctive.
How did you track him down?
There's a local neighborhood watch group, and one of the members recognized the car from the footage. They told me it belonged to Mr. Smith.
Did you confront Mr. Smith?
Yes, I went to his house and showed him the footage. He admitted it was his car, but said he wasn't driving it.
Did you get an estimate for the damage?
Yes, Your Honor. Here are the repair estimates.
These estimates total $5,000.
Yes, Your Honor. The rear bumper and side panel need to be replaced, and there's also damage to the rear light and some paintwork.
Bailiff, please display the photos of the damages and the repair estimates on the screen. I see. These damages do appear significant. Mr. Smith, you may now present your side of the story. Mr. Smith, let's hear your side of the story.
Your Honor, on the night of June 5th, I lent my car to my friend Jake. He needed it to get home because his car was in the shop. I had no idea he would get into an accident. No, Your Honor. I only found out when Mrs. Johnson came to my house with the footage.
Did Jake inform you of the accident?
No, Your Honor. Jake has always been a responsible driver as far as I know. Yes, I have my insurance papers right here.
And you confronted Jake after that?
Yes, I did. He admitted to hitting the car but said he panicked and drove away.
Mr. Peterson, please take the stand. State your name for the record.
Jake Peterson, Your Honor.
Mr. Peterson, were you driving Mr. Smith's car on the night of June 5th?
Yes, Your Honor, I was.
Tell me what happened.
I was driving home, and suddenly a dog ran into the street. I swerved to avoid it and ended up hitting Mrs. Johnson's car. I was in shock and just drove off. I know it was wrong, but I panicked.
Did you report the incident to the police or to Mr. Smith?
No, Your Honor. I thought I could handle the repairs on my own, but then Mrs. Johnson showed up at Mr. Smith's house.
Mr. Smith, did you have any prior knowledge that Jake might be a reckless driver?
No, Your Honor. Jake has always been a responsible driver as far as I know.
Do you have any proof of insurance, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I have my insurance papers right here.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Johnson, did you try to resolve this matter outside of court?
Yes, Your Honor. I asked Mr. Smith to pay for the damages, but he refused. He said it wasn't his fault since he wasn't driving.
Mr. Smith, did you offer any compensation to Mrs. Johnson?
I told her I would talk to Jake and see if he could pay for the damages, but Jake didn't have the money and I can't afford to cover it myself.
All right, let's move on to the witness testimony. Mrs. Johnson, you mentioned a neighbor who witnessed the incident. Please have her take the stand. Mrs. Johnson's neighbor, Sarah Williams, steps up to the stand. State your name for the record.
Sarah Williams, Your Honor.
Ms. Williams, what did you see on the night of June 5th?
I was getting ready for bed when I heard a loud crash outside. I looked out my window and saw a black sedan swerving and speeding away.
Can you confirm that the car in the footage is the same one you saw?
Yes, Your Honor. It's the same car.
Did you see the driver?
No, it was too dark to see the driver.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. You may step down. Mr. Smith, do you have any witnesses?
No, Your Honor, it was just Jake driving my car that night.
All right, let's move on to my interrogation. Mr. Peterson, you mentioned a dog running into the street. Did you see the dog clearly?
Yes, Your Honor. It was a large dog, maybe a Labrador.
Did you stop to check if the dog was all right?
No, Your Honor. It ran off after I swerved.
So, you were more concerned about avoiding the dog than the car you hit?
Yes, Your Honor. I didn't want to hurt the dog.
Mr. Smith, how long have you known Jake?
We've been friends for about 5 years.
And this is the first time he borrowed your car?
No, he's borrowed it a few times before without any issues.
Mrs. Johnson, have you had any prior issues with damage to your car?
No, Your Honor. This is the first time anything like this has happened.
All right, I've heard enough. Let's proceed to closing arguments.
Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows that Mr. Smith's car hit mine, causing $5,000 in damage. Whether it was him or his friend driving, the responsibility lies with Mr. Smith. I request that he be ordered to pay for the repairs.
Your Honor, while I understand Mrs. Johnson's frustration, I believe it's unfair to hold me entirely responsible for an accident I didn't personally cause. Jake was driving my car and admitted to hitting her vehicle. I ask that any compensation be directed towards Jake, as he was the one driving.
Thank you both. I'll now give my verdict. Here's what we're going to do. Mr. Smith, while I understand you were not the one driving, it was your vehicle involved in the accident. When you lend your car to someone, you are still responsible for what happens with it. Jake, you admitted to hitting Mrs. Johnson's car and driving off without reporting it, which is not only irresponsible, but also illegal. Therefore, Mr. Smith, you are ordered to pay Mrs. Johnson the $5,000 for the damages to her car. You can take up the issue of repayment with Jake separately, but as far as this court is concerned, the plaintiff deserves to be compensated immediately. That's my decision. Court is adjourned.
All rise. Let's hear what the litigants have to say after the verdict. Mrs. Johnson, how do you feel about the verdict?
I'm relieved. It was clear that Mr. Smith's car caused the damage, and I'm glad Judge Judy saw it that way. Now I can finally get my car repaired.
Mr. Smith, what's your take on the judge's decision?
I understand the ruling, but it's frustrating because I wasn't driving. I'll talk to Jake about covering the cost, but I guess it's a lesson learned about lending out my car.
Another case closed in Judge Judy's courtroom. Tune in next time for more real cases and real resolutions.
If you're new here, Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated.